Hey guys, MC Stu here, and today we are going to talk about your activation chain or activation sequence. I've gotten a few questions in the Discord and comments about this, and so I figure I'd do a quick talk on how I set mine up, kind of maybe help steer you in the right direction of how you may want to set yours up. Now, this can vary a little bit depending on your build and what you're doing, but there are some fundamental principles that you'll want to follow here to help you get the most out of your build. Let's go ahead and jump right on into it, guys. So when I say your activation chain, what we're looking at is a couple different things. So the way I set mine up is going to be on my spam bar here. And what I put on my spam bar are things that I can have up fairly often. So DPRM is not on that, and my Focus Frenzy is not on that either because they have a large cooldown. There's also some abilities like Omega that I want to be able to use it on very specific targets, and so I put that as a manual clicky. Now, these things are still going to be included in your power chain or your activation sequence, but they're going to be a little more specific when you're getting to a boss or a dreadnought or something like that. Now, let's take a look at what I'm constantly spamming. Now, you get the most out of this obviously when a TFO starts, or if you're being disciplined with your spam bar and waiting for most of it to come off of cooldown before you start going at it again, or if you're manually clicking. You do not have to have a spam bar to achieve this talk. This is kind of beyond that. So spam bar kind of makes things a little bit easier for me. If you manually click and you are able to manage all of that and pilot your ship, you can probably do even better, but it takes a really special somebody to be able to manage all the abilities and pilot your ship and be aware of what's going on the map. So spam bar is definitely something I recommend, maybe not with quite as much stuff as I have, but in any case, I'll be using the spam bar on this talk here. But if you're manually clicking or whatever you're doing, the same principles are going to apply. So when we say activation sequence, we're talking about what things or what order we want to activate things, okay? And so the way that I set mine up is I have all the things that are going to give me damage boost here on this row 8 prior to activating my main firing mode. Let's forget about some of these other ones here for now. So let's just get an example of what we have going on, okay? So if we take a look at this, this is a dual heavy crescent wave cannon. And right now, sitting still, we are sitting at 2,969.8 disruptor damage, okay? Now, if I start activating this power chain here, that number is going to start to boost up, and it's going to get the buffs from some of these other abilities as well as the damage boost from these abilities, and then the main firing mode is going to activate. This is a cannon scatter volley build, and so with all of that stuff running, cannon scatter volley 3 is going to target 3 enemies, and we're going to get all of these bonuses hitting those 3 and then the next 3, provided they die very quickly, which they will if you time these things out correctly, okay? So let's just look at the example of the effect of chaining those things together instead of just kind of picking one or picking this or just kind of having it all over the place and just kind of click-clacking, right? Because all of these things are going to stack up, all of these different damage abilities. And just to clarify, so I have hazard emitters here, and that's because let me make sure I still am, for specializations was running strategist, and I am, and so when you run strategist and you do a heal, we are going to get some additional critical chance. So that's why that's in there as a quote-unquote damage ability. I am getting the heal from it obviously as well. All right, so let's just go ahead and look at this example here. So we're at 2,969. So let's go ahead and start activating here. And I have my rows backwards, unfortunately, but that's okay. All right, so with everything pumped up there, we're at 6,335. So that is double, more than double what that base damage is. And then you take into account your crit chance, and if you get crit hits, you're going to see that potentially almost double again as well for those hits. So that's a huge amount. You're looking at, being able to put out 10,000 disruptor damage, and if you have a fairly high crit chance, you're going to see that pretty often. Now we do have, and let's see where we're sitting at here. So we're sitting at 56 critical chance. So I mean, basically at least every other shot on average is going to have a crit hit on top of that. So we have this chain goes off, okay? So we've activated all of our damage buffs, and we've activated our main firing mode. Lastly, and we'll touch on these other ones after here. Lastly, I would have Photonic Officer going, and that would then start cooling all of these abilities down, minus the captain's abilities here, which are going to be these three. And you'll have to look back through some of the beginner guides, but there's some other personal space traits that are actually cooling these down faster on critical hits. That's why they're here. Otherwise, like if this was a brand new tune, or I didn't have some of those, these items would actually be manually clicked as well because they have a longer cooldown. So Photonic Officer goes off and starts cooling all my abilities back down so that they can all be back up as quickly as possible, and we continue chaining those together. So your best, quote-unquote alpha strike is going to be at the beginning, right? Because everything is off a cooldown. You start activating all of it in a row. That's where you're going to get the biggest boost. Okay, so let's say we did all that, and half of the stuff is on cooldown, and the other half is not. When I start hitting that spacebar again, it doesn't just pick up where it left off, right? It's going to start at the beginning every single time when it goes back through. So every time I do start hitting the spacebar, even if all of these things are not off cooldown, I'm still going to get at least a few of these damage boosts before we get back to our main firing mode again. So once you go through your first rotation, that's going to be your biggest, boost that you can get, because everything's going at once. And if you're constantly in combat, things are refreshing, but you're most likely not going to have everything up again unless you just ease off the spacebar. You let your auto fire just keep going. But if you continue to click it, some of these things are going to be coming off of cooldown along with your firing mode, and you'll continue to get chains of boosts for that firing mode and for the particular damage type that you're doing. Now, the reason I have these other abilities after the fact, so I have a omnidirectional beam back here. This also gives me a boost to speed. That's kind of secondary, right? I needed to fill space. I have a torpedo. It's on the back. It really doesn't fire a lot because this is a forward firing. It's part of a set. That's why it's there, but let's forget about that for this talk. But I am running Boimlers on this build, right? So I'm activating my chain, and Boimlers, every time you activate a bridge officer ability, it gives you a chance to cool down your other bridge officer abilities of a different class to its global cooldown, which is almost as far as you can get it, right? So let's go through the scenario again. We start hitting the spacebar, all of these abilities are activated, our firing mode is activated, and we're shooting at the bad guys, blowing stuff up. Next, these two abilities are going, or three abilities are going to be activated along with Photonic Officer. Photonic Officer cools everything down a little bit faster, but by activating all these other abilities after it, we're having a chance to continue to get that proc from Boimlers to cool all of the other abilities down. And as you go forward, we're just recycling that whole process. So this is probably going to be somewhat basic to people that have been playing for a while or built for a while. But for your newer players, I know I had no clue about any of this stuff. And then even once I did, I had things out of order. So, there's some people that'll put cannon scatter volley first and then activate. And I think there's probably some good arguments for that. But generally what you could do is look at how long each mode is, right, to be able to get the most out of it and have what is activated first have the longest mode. So for instance, I have Chemocide up here because it only has 10 seconds as opposed to emergency power to weapons, which is going to have 30 seconds, right? So I have that closer to the beginning only because when I do start to activate, it does take a second or two to get through all of this. But I find that I get the most out of it by having all of the buffs up and then the firing mode activated, and it starts spraying out the damage, and then these additional abilities are going off, which is giving a chance for all of my other abilities to cool down, all my bridge officer abilities, and then finally ending with Photonic Officer, which is next to Boimler, the main cooldown on this particular build. So I just wanted to go over that. Like I said, it's somewhat straightforward, but if you haven't, thought that through, or I mean, for me, it's not like I figured it out, right? Somebody told me. And so I just wanted to make sure that that bit of information was out, especially for the newer players, the players that are, looking to really, step their builds up and go to the next level. I wanted to make sure that was out there so that, somebody had told you, because most of the things that I, communicate in these videos and stuff, I didn't figure it all out. I mean, there's some minor stuff and some things, but, it all came from people that, have played this game for a long time, from different, bits and pieces. And, sometimes I'll participate in testing this or that, or, figure a little something out. But, there's a lot of stuff happening in this game, and all these different layers and stuff. So the more information we can share, with each other, the better it makes all of us, and the more fun that all of us will have, which is the number one thing. I personally like to, especially on my free-to-play account here, I like to try and make as much as I can out of as little as possible and get as much damage out of that, and that's how I have fun. Others could care less about this, and that's totally cool too. I mean, it's a video game. We're all here to have fun. So I hope that was helpful, guys. If you have questions, throw them down in the comments. Definitely consider joining the Discord. It's a great community in there. If you have questions on this, or just want to chat with other like-minded people that play the game. There's a lot of great guys in there, and we would be more than happy to have you. Let me know what you guys thought of the video. I always appreciate your feedback. If you're new to the channel, new to SDO, please consider hitting that sub button, ringing the bell, so you know when the next videos go live. I have 3 other videos popping up on the screen right now that will complement this one if this was helpful to you, and that's how to train your bridge officer's cooldown for your bridge officer abilities, and the bridge officer abilities you should prioritize getting first. Alright guys, thanks again. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate all of you. Until next time, stay safe and have a good one.